Greetings, Internet! Welcome to episode number 202 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm Matt, this is Chad, and we are joined this week by the wonderfully talented Mr. Dave Baker, who's going to tell us all about Mary Tyler Moorehawk, which it just rolls off the tongue in such a pleasing way. Dave, how the hell are you, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to take the time to chit chat.
Yes, we are. We like to talk about comics, so yeah, I'm excited to see where this convo takes us. But you're the guest. I don't want to take anything away from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your origin story for comics, man? What are your favorites? What's your kryptonite? Is Marvel or DC the better company?
Yeah, my origin story for comics is I found the medium through the library system in Arizona, where I'm from. I was really obsessed with like boy adventurer and girl adventurer stories as a kid, like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, Trixie Belden, Torchy Lane, that kind of stuff. And a librarian, some random librarian, suggested Tintin, and I flipped out for it. I think I was probably like 4, 3, somewhere around there, and I have been obsessed with both with Tintin, but also specifically the medium of comics as a whole ever since, basically. And then I kind of went from Tintin to Marvel, DC, the X-Men, Spider-Man, that kind of stuff, and then back into indie comics and manga, and now I read a bunch of everything. I read a bunch of French comics, Korean stuff, manga. Yeah, I love the medium in general.
And
oh no,
I was going to say, tell us what. Tell us a little bit about your, what you've done in the industry so far. I mean, you were Eisner nominated.
Yeah. So some of my previous works include the Dark Horse graphic novel Everyone is Tulip, which is co-created with Nicole Gu. It got nominated for Best Digital Comic at the Eisner Awards in 2021? 22? I think.
Two. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Yeah. I also wrote a Star Trek miniseries, and I've written the graphic novels Fuck Off Squad and Night Hunters and Forest Hills Bootleg Society. Yeah, so I'm around. I'm doing stuff. I'm out here. I'm like making moves.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, you're already got an Eisner nom under your belt, so that's more than a lot of people can say that have been doing this a lot longer. So today we're talking about Mary Tyler Moorehawk, which again, love it, chef's kiss. Tell us about this bad boy or bad girl, whatever, however you.
Yeah, Mary Tyler Moorehawk is a graphic novel that I wrote. It's coming out through TopShelf February 14th. It's split into two halves. It's a little bit of an unconventional book where one half of the book is a straight ahead, very earnest action adventure story about a young girl adventurer named Mary Tyler Moorehawk and her family of super scientist adventurers as they are attempting to stop a spatio-temporal holocaust from happening. And the other half of the book is epistolary zines from 100 years in the future. There are excerpts and kind of collected ephemera from a zine called Physicalist Today, which is a publication self-published by a collection of people who are obsessed with physical objects, because 100 years in the future, all physical objects have been outlawed, and so our cultural memory has been almost completely eroded. And so the idea that of even what stories are has kind of been lost to time, except for this very small subterranean group of collectors who are obsessed with all things from days of yore. And we follow a journalist named Dave Baker who's obsessed with a TV show called Mary Tyler Moorehawk, who then he's taken upon himself to track down the reclusive, mysterious creator of the TV show and comics, and he ultimately ends up discovering that his idol is named Dave Baker, and it ends up unlocking more existential and weird meta questions.
I was going to say, you may have just out-meted Grant Morrison there.
Right. Yeah.
I love the unconventional storytelling here in Mary Tyler Moorehawk. The first half, I can even though it's got kind of a, I'm going to struggle for the right term, but a little bit of a cyberpunk feel to it. It or apocalyptic cyberpunk maybe would be a better way to look at it. It kind of feels like those original Tintin influences are shining through. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I lived in France for a while earlier this year, and while I was living over there, I had a book come out. I did a little signing tour, and one of the places I went was Belgium, and that's where he's from, and from Brussels specifically. And there's a museum in Brussels, well, outside of Brussels, dedicated to Hergé, the creator of Tintin. And it was for me, it was like going home to Mecca. Like it was amazing. Hergé, Georges Remy, the man, maybe had some flaws, maybe a little bit of racism in his past, and I don't think that should be glossed over. Um, the work itself, for me, was very foundational, though. I think you can look at my drawings and see a pretty straight line between those, especially the later, like, weird Tintin books. Like, my favorite one is well, it's not my favorite. It's the one I say is my favorite. Is it actually my favorite? Who knows? Who knows?
Is it the
But the
one
one
that
I
you say is your favorite for street cred?
yeah, well, it is my favorite. Flight 714 to Sydney is the one that I say is my favorite. Or 732 to Sydney, whatever the one is where they find aliens and they get the plane crashes and there's the weird guy with the eye patch and the gun and they're running around like they go subterranean. Like I loved that book as a younger person, and I still do. Um, but I mean, objectively, it's hard to argue with the Secret of the Unicorn as just an objective work, as and Blue Lotus. I think those are or maybe Red Rackham's Treasure. Those are the three that are like the high watermarks,
Got you.
Um,
Got you.
and yeah, I think there's a lot of that in there. I think there's a lot of Tintin. I think there's a lot of Buckaroo Banzai in Mary Tyler Moorehawk. I think there's also a lot of, you know, novelists like Mark Z. Danielewski and David Foster Wallace, and I think there's a whole soup of things that I love that are all kind of mushed together and melded into the book. Yeah.
With that many influences, how do you create a balance in that the world itself feels organic without feeling like you kind of just alluded to a hodgepodge?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that that's even my place to say if I've succeeded in that. I don't know. It could be just like a
Maybe my work sucks.
yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Oh, I
I mean,
seriously doubt.
I think the commonality in all of these people that we're talking about as the influences for the book is that they're all very intelligent in the way they approach their given specific mediums. Like I think specifically with David Foster Wallace, he wrote a bunch of essays and a novel. He wrote, 3 novels, and all of them are very specific in how they approach parsing the picture plane of the actual real estate of a page of prose. Specifically, his essays, Consider the Lobster and supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, were really influential for me in terms of like, a comic is an image, a gutter, and then another image, and your brain takes all of that information and puts it together into a cohesive whole. And those sustained separate things end up blurring into a kind of persistence of vision in the mind's eye in a way that is somewhat similar to how actual persistence of vision in film works, where there's 24 frames 24 frames per second, rushing by your eyes. And the way that Danielewski and Wallace use real estate in order to make different blocks of text separated by either a gutter or an indent or asterisks, footnotes, back of the pages, endnotes. They're really using the form of the prosaic novel in ways that I thought were really interesting and that I think were applicable to comics in I don't think David Foster Wallace was like, I'm going to make a fucking comic or a novel that feels like a comic. But to me, I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much raw data here just in terms of formal inventiveness that I think I could take and port over to comics and it would feel unique and interesting and exciting in a way that wouldn't happen. And then, of course, there's also just a lot of me in it, right? Like, as much as we're talking about these are all the influences and there's all this, kind of literary attempt on display because the book is both a novel and a comic. There's also just the fact that at a certain point, as an artist, you can't help but have your voice be there as the metronome that guides everything, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That all makes sense. Um, so, Chad, jump back on in.
Sure.
That was a lot. I'm going to have to come back around, so you get to take the wheel for a minute.
Sure. So how was the experience, with Mary Tyler Moorehawk compared to writing Everyone is Tulip? I mean, Everyone is Tulip is a very kind of about being popular on social media, if I remember it correctly. I'm sorry, it's been a while since I've read it, but
No,
and this seems more of a sci-fi type. Is there a different approach that that you take to kind of differentiate those styles of writing?
Yeah, I think it's less the subject matter and it's more the fact that I'm dealing with an artist, or that I'm collaborating, not dealing. That makes it sound like a hardship. I'm collaborating with an artist, right? So there's me as the individual and what I want to draw, and then there's me as the writer who's trying to service a story. And sometimes the artist just dictates what I can write because I can't draw certain things. Like, I'm just not that good. Whereas with Nicole for Everyone's Tulip, thank you. But with Nicole, there's a specific remit. She doesn't want to draw explosions. She doesn't want to draw car chases or horses or cathedrals. Like, she just doesn't want to do that. So I know, okay, I shouldn't write those things. And I try to tailor the story to maximize what she does want to draw, right? Like, she wants to draw intimacy and character moments and acting and fashion. And the story has a wraparound mechanic of the protagonist talking to camera wearing different outfits, wearing these kind of high couture or haute couture fashion outfits that are, what you might see on a Paris runway or something like that. And if I was drawing it, I would never write that for myself because I don't have an expertise in that specific style of design. Whereas I love creating characters, and there's every title page in Mary Tyler Moorehawk is a big double page splash where there's like a bunch of different characters and they're all running around jumping, and everybody is always like, God, why did you do that to yourself? And that's the stuff that I get excited about. Like, I love designing a weird alligator mummy zombie Dracula robot guy that's only going to be in one panel, right? To me, that's fun. And I think you have to kind of, as a writer, you have to learn. I've heard a lot of people who ride horses talk about learning the gait of their horse and learning how the horse moves, so you can become one with it in that way. And writing for different artists is kind of the same way, where, like, I've worked on Turtles and Godzilla and Star Trek and all this other stuff, and like they don't always tell you who's drawing it, so you can write this, and then the building explodes, and you're like, I hope they find somebody cool because I don't know. We'll see what happens.
As a creator, tell us a little bit about the different muscles that you flex in creating for yourself versus that collaborative process, because it is two different sets of reflexes, and obviously you've done both. But I mean, do you find when you're fully in control, it's a little easier? You have less to anticipate, or is it just the fact that it's so different from collaboration make it a challenge unto itself?
I think in a certain context, I'm my own worst enemy because if I like an idea enough, I'm just gonna go for it, even if it's not like the most commercial or the easiest path forward. Case in point being, this book is 300-ish pages. It's a novel. It's
It's
a
a beast.
graphic
Yeah,
novel.
yeah.
It's a beast, right? It's a big thing. It started as an 8-page mini comic. You know what I mean? Like but then I had the idea of like, oh, because honestly, this project is basically it came out of the bones of an abandoned project. I was gonna
Mm.
do a book. I had this idea, which I still might do someday, but it probably won't be exactly this idea. But I was going to do a book called Series Finale: the series, and it was going to be the idea is that it was a TV show in the future where they got the rights to all these different canceled shows and then made a final episode to send all of those shows off into this proverbial sunset. And
Oh, wow.
the book that you would be reading was essentially going to be like a commemorative gift that the producers were giving to the cast and crew. So it was going to be kind of an oral history of how this project came together, a bunch of the scripts and excerpts of the episodes, and then there would be, the tie-in merchandise that had been produced. So I was going to like make a fake Mary Tyler Moorehawk toy and a little insert of an 8-page mini comic of Mary Tyler Moorehawk, and she was going to be the 9th chapter in the book. It was going to be 9 episodes long. And so I started this project, and it was really fun. And I wrote all these pilots and random scenes from these movies and things that never happened, whatever. And then I started thinking about like who is the person that would put this all together. And then I started kind of losing interest in that stuff, and I found myself thinking more about this action adventure character that I had written one of these fake pilots for, or final episodes for, and I just got so taken with it that I just kept going down that road. And that wouldn't have happened if it was a collaboration with another person. I wouldn't have just abandoned an entire project to go off over here.
Sure.
Um,
You're
but that being
more
said,
free to follow your muse.
yeah, totally. Which again, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe not.
Maybe you need that person to check you. I don't know. It probably would depend on the collaborator.
Yeah, and like that's something, even just talking about it right now, I might go back to that series finale, the series idea.
I think it sounds fun. It sounds to me like between this and the latter half of Mary Tyler Moorehawk, or between that and the latter half of Mary Tyler Moorehawk, I should say, you seem to be liking to dip your toes quite a bit in the more esoteric and meta, maybe not necessarily commentary, but just meta in general end of the creative pool. Where does that creative urge come from?
Where does that come from?
Because I don't think, and just to frame a reference a little bit, I don't think a lot of people would think about, who's the person putting this project together that I'm making into a series of canceled shows, series finales. There's a lot of
I think the quippy short answer to your question is mental illness.
Okay.
And then I think the longer answer is just, we live in a late stage capitalist corporate hellscape where no new ideas can exist, and all of the previously exciting modes of distribution for ideas have been throttled and are only conduits for a charnel house filled with nostalgia and regret. Like it's a real difficult time in that context. But also it's also the best because, like Dickens said, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. It's also a time where, because of the decentralization of production through things like print on demand and internet distribution and app-based distribution, that there's all these exciting new independent voices and wildly inventive formalist approaches to not just comics, but every medium happening. So, the mainstream monoculture is, it's an organism in and of itself that seems to be just continually devouring its own tail. And the indie world seems to be talking to an ever increasingly smaller component of the audience, but the things that get made in that world are really cool. So I don't know. I think that tension or that frustration is probably where a lot of this stuff comes from in the book, where it's, about trying to make a thing in an environment where everyone's forgotten how to, process the idea of things.
So to that end, with you existing outside of this Ouroboros of late stage capitalism eating its own tail, how do you
What?
get anyone's attention to
Dude.
look at your very unique vision, right? And this isn't just about you, obviously. This is about all the creators that are out there on the bleeding edge of creative wavelengths.
I mean, frankly, it's not easy, man. It's not easy. I think I think the first step is defining as an artist. You have to define for yourself the aegis of what you're willing to be aligned with, right? What is the standard that you're willing to accept as your standard that you will march forward into the great breach with, right? And there are just some publishers that I personally don't feel the need to party with, and then there are others that I am extremely possess a great amount of admiration for, and I really think that they are really doing the Lord's work. And the thing that was very difficult about this process, because the book is so strange and because it is so avant-garde, I got rejected from everybody. Like, I got rejected from the people I didn't want to work with and from the people I wanted to work with. Like, it was like, oh, nobody wants to go to the dance. All right. It took me about 5 years, and I was pitching the book the whole time I was making it. And, I think it says a lot that Chris Staros at Top Shelf saw the book and was like, this is weird, man, but let's try it. Let's see what happens. I really think that it took somebody who could recognize the fact that this wasn't going to have a lot of comparables in the limited pool of comics. I think there's things to draw comparisons to other places, which is why I'm hopeful that it will have a life. And quite frankly, it already has gotten a better response. It got a starred review in Publishers Weekly. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I didn't even think that they would. It's just nuts. It's nuts. And it just feels so positive, and it's such a boon, and it is such an experience that frankly I never thought would happen. I thought that I was hopeful that I could find a book publisher that I could align with, and we could see what would happen. And it already is a better experience than I could have possibly imagined. But it was not an easy road, to answer your question.
Sure. No. I mean, it doesn't hurt that you were fortunate enough to align, like you said, with a publisher like Top Shelf that has such a sterling reputation for high quality products.
Yeah, and we've talked with other creators who've worked with Top Shelf, and I think it's probably the only publisher that this book would fit in their line.
Yeah. I mean, and to speak candidly, I got offered a deal elsewhere, and it wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. And then I also got approached by a different publisher, and they said, we think that this could be a cool book for us if it's just the comic book sections. And I just couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't do it. I was like, you're probably right. It probably will sell more if it's just the comic book stuff. But that's just not what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to make something that is strange and off the beaten path and has some ambition and is really, trying to push things in a specific direction. And I understand that that's not for everybody. And I understand that it's not an easy sell, both on the publishing side or even on the readership side. I get opening this book and being like, ugh, that's a lot of words.
I got to read prose? Come on.
Yeah.
Chad, go ahead.
I have just a couple, questions about, your art process, because um, I mean, I've seen your videos that you put up on TikTok about how you do your work, and I think it's kind of unique to you the way that you not only do the art, but you're the colors. I don't know, it's color scheme that you use. How did you kind of develop that? Because it's also similar what you've used, I believe, in Halloween Boy.
Totally. Yeah. So the way I do it is I draw all my construction lines in red architectural pencil, and then I would say I take that to maybe like a 30% of a drawing. Like it's like the shapes are there, some of the details, but it is like really rough. And then I finish the drawing in 2B pencil from a mechanical pencil that is, just a standard, you know, I draw with a pencil I bought from Costco like 15 years ago. Like it's not a high tech situation. And then I take it, I scan it into the computer, and I pull out all the red underdrawings in Photoshop. Then I bring it over to Procreate, and I do like a single tone on it, a single digital tone that's kind of like a spot color or a drop color. And the reason I do it that way is because I have a very laborious, detail-oriented style, and I didn't want to have to draw everything twice. I didn't want to have to pencil everything and then ink everything, and also I kind of messed up my hand inking my last book because I inked the last probably like 100 pages of it with like a rapidograph pen, which was not a smart move. It really messed up my wrist for a while. So I was like, okay, this just isn't sustainable. I like the way inks look, but I just can't do it. So how do I reinvent? This book was really a process of reinvention on multiple fronts. I taught myself how to color. I re-taught myself how to letter in Procreate as opposed to Illustrator. I colored probably 70 to 80% of the book with my left hand because my right hand was so messed up. And so it was kind of in some ways the most difficult way forward was always the way that it ended up happening. And I don't know what that says about my psyche, but it just is what it is, man. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it's my personality is, oh, there's some fire, I should walk through it.
So you're saying there's a little bit of a masochism to your creative process.
I mean, look, man, I'm not saying anything one way or the other. All I'm saying is look at all those lines on those pages and you can draw your own conclusion.
I got you. And so you mentioned 5 years earlier in the conversation about the creative process. You did lose me a little bit. Have you been working on this book for 5 years?
Pretty much. I mean,
Wow.
it's basically like, I would say I worked on it actively for about 4 years,
Okay.
maybe 4.5, and then it sat on a shelf. The process is you sell a book to a publisher, and then it takes about a year for it to come out.
Sure.
So the idea is, it was about 5 years from when I started it to when it was eventually released, maybe 5.5.
That's incredible, though. I mean, how much changed in your vision for the story and what you were going to do with it from start to finish?
Well, considering it started as another book, pretty considerably.
Yeah, beyond that,
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it's funny because I feel like it has changed significantly, especially when because initially I was just going to do it as a graphic novel. And then when I had the idea to do all of the Physicalist Today future segments, I was like, oh, yeah, this could be really weird and like unusual in a way that nothing else so far has been. And so I think that's a pretty big, and I don't exactly remember when in the years span that happened of when I decided I'm going to do the prose stuff as interstitials, but I was significantly into the comics stuff before. I was originally, it was just going to be the, adventure comic kind of homage send up stuff.
Chat.
So going back to to the your art process, how long does it actually take you to finish a page?
Yeah, it actually doesn't take me that long. I would say when I'm actively producing pages, I draw somewhere between 3 and 5 pages a day. But it just depends on what I'm doing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
for Halloween Boy, it's pretty 4 or 5 pages a day when I'm actively doing it, right? But when I'm doing like a double page spread or a cover or maybe one of those big tableau images where there's a bunch of characters, that stuff takes a little bit longer. Like that's like, oh, I'm working on a page that 2 pages for like a day or maybe 2 days. But it is pretty rapid when I'm in the pace of it. The issue just being I have a day job and sometimes I get pulled away to either work for hire comics or to write other things for other artists. So, it's not a constant just font of pages. It's like, oh, I'm working for 2 months and like perfect example. I lived in France for 3 months. When I went there, I think I had 15 pages of issue 4 of Halloween Boy done. And then when we came back, Halloween Boy 4 became Halloween Boy 5, or sorry, 15 pages of issue 5. And when we came back, issue 5 became 5 and 6 because I drew 100 pages in the 3 months that we lived there. And I ended up splitting them into two 50-ish page issues. And so that kind of shows you of like okay, sometimes it's, you know, whatever, a month I'm drawing 25, 30 pages. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't have a lot to do right now. So it's 60 pages in a month or 2 months or whatever.
And I know we've talked about you mentioned your trip to and living in France. Was that something that you planned to do to kind of expose yourself to the different types of comic book stuff, your forums and stuff that they have over there?
It was a little kind of a little D, all of the above, right? It was like, my partner Nicole and I had been trapped in our houses for a couple years because of the pandemic. We were a little restless. So we looked up, how long can you stay in France without a visa? You can stay 3 months. Okay, let's go stay in France for 3 months. I wanted to attend Angoulême, which is the biggest French bande dessinée and comics festival. So I was like, can we stay one of the, some period of the time in Angoulême so we can go to this festival? And she was like, yeah, that sounds great. So we lived in Angoulême for 1 month and then in Bordeaux for 2 months. And then we went to London for a month after that. So we were in Europe for about 4 months. And yeah, it was partly to see comic stuff and experience all of that and learn more about the French market, and also partly just to not be here anymore for a little while, just to kind of, you know, maybe
Mhm.
maybe just experience something that wasn't the 4 walls of my house. Um, and pure dumb luck, 100% dumb luck. We went over there when the French translation of Forest Hills Bootleg Society, our Simon and Schuster book, happened. So we like showed up and I was just trying to figure out how to get tickets to the festival. And I was like, hey, how do I do this? And I was emailing my foreign rights lawyer and she was like, don't you have a French edition? Just ask your publisher to get you passes, bro. And I emailed them being like, hey, how does one go to show? Question mark. And they were like, do you want to like table? Do you want to come and are you guys going to be in France? So we went and we tabled and we met all the people, the publisher. They were so nice and made a bunch of weird French cartoonist friends, which was cool. And while we were at that show, actually, I'm like a little bit of a social butterfly, man. I'll talk to anybody. So some people came to the table and they were asking like, oh, Americans, that's interesting. How long are you in France for? Expecting the answer to be like 2 days. And I was like, oh, we're actually going to be here for another 2.5 months. And they were like, oh, where are you going to be staying? Here in Angoulême the whole time? I was like, no, we're going to Bordeaux. And they were like, oh, we live in Bordeaux. And so when we got to Bordeaux, we just had like a weird extended friend network, like immediately. It was so strange. It was like just dropping into an alternate life. It was unreal. Uh, such a positive experience. And our book came out. We did a book signing all across France, which was really cool. Went to multiple festivals, and yeah, it was really a special time. It was really great. And I ended up spending like $300 mailing books to myself from France.
How much
You,
how much of the French artistic culture, or just French culture in general, do you think is now seeped into your work just by osmosis?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think I think the thing that was more interesting to me was more the constants that are the same. I think over here in the creative community, at least, I think there's a perception that like, oh, France, man, they've got it all figured out. Like they love like comics in France in their culture, and that is true. That is true. But there's just so few people that it's not. It's the same problem we have over here, where like over here we're constantly like, we are a real art form. Someone pay attention to us. And like over there they're like, we do deserve money. Someone pay attention to us. So it's the same conversation, it's predatory publishers. This guy's a dick. Those publishers are great. Oh my gosh, I wish my advance was higher. I wish I didn't have to give up these rights. It's the same. It's more or less the same, just in different configurations. And that's what's interesting to me, right? It's the
and a lot more cheese.
Yeah, dude, cheese is very good. Cheese is very good. Yeah.
Cheese and wine, baby.
I didn't know that champagne wasn't just a type of like bubbly drink. I don't really drink. So when we went to the Champagne region to do a signing, like we got off the train and they were like, here's a glass of actual champagne because you've never had champagne before. And I was like, I feel like it's not. And my partner, Nicole, she was like, no. You trust me, this is real champagne. And I was like, oh, all right, fair enough.
Now we've kind of talked about it a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about Halloween Boy and kind of the background for that and the influences for that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Halloween Boy is the book I've been like self-publishing over the last year or so, maybe year and a half. Basically I sold to TopShelf, and then I was like, well, I got a year before this thing comes out, so I guess I got to make something. So I kind of wanted to do something very simple. I wanted to try and make a distilled version of the kind of action adventure genre that I'd been playing in, but make it a little bit more approachable, because I had so much rejection from Mary Tyler Moorehawk being so kind of literary. So I kind of was toying around with a couple ideas, and I remembered that I had approached and been in talks with King Features, the company that controls the rights to the Phantom. Maybe 2 years ago, I was working as like an adjunct editor at a comics company, and we had reached out to them. We had some meetings, and it was productive, and we were talking about doing the Phantom. And then they were like, okay, what do you want to do with the Phantom? And so I wrote this big God document of all of these ideas of world building and what we were going to really like push forward with the Phantom. And they were like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. Which was fine. It's their character. It's, they control the rights. Lee Falk is long dead at this point. So, okay. But I went back to all of those ideas, and I was like, I think there's something here, man. I think I could kind of remix some of this stuff and take a little bit of, my love of Buckaroo Banzai and BPRD and Hellboy and shove it together with some of the kind of the milieu of those kind of retro futuristic pulp characters like the Phantom or Flash Gordon. And I think there could be something really special here. And, now I've made 5 issues of it. There's like 200 pages or so. And I've been self-publishing it for a year. The high concept is basically Halloween Boy is an action adventure hero who's been raised on a floating skull-shaped island off of Earth's lower orbit. And he's been marooned there since he was a little kid, raised by robots to believe that he's the patron saint of the impossible. So people show up on his doorstep and they're like, hey, I need your help getting this crystal from the center of the earth. Or, hey, my parents are trapped in an alternate dimension. Hey, there's a stone tablet that has a secret invisible letter we didn't know existed in the alphabet that can end mankind if spoken aloud, and we need to get that before somebody else uses it. And if your quest is impossible enough, he'll take it on. So each of the first 3 issues are standalone adventures, and the last 2 are this big kind of grand finale 2-parter, all about this. It was like a resolution of this mystery that's been running through the whole book about like his family lineage and his parents and why he was marooned on the island to begin with. Eagle-eyed viewers might notice a couple cameos, maybe. I don't even know if he could show up, but there we go. He's right there, sort of. If my screen wasn't censoring him, there we go. Yeah, he's right there.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So I love Halloween Boy. It's been a real pleasure making those books, and there's actually going to be an action figure.
I've seen you been posting about that, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Crazy. Yeah, there's a toy line. Yeah, there's a toy line called Monster Task Force. Oh my God, Operation Monster Force. Could I get the name right, please? By Fresh Monkey Fiction, and I've known the guy who runs the company for a couple years on the convention circuit or whatever, and we were talking about the stuff I'm working on, and then he was like, "Oh, that Halloween Boy character is pretty cool. Would you ever want to do a toy of him?" And after some discussion, we landed on putting him in this line, and so he's gonna kind of be like a, the way I kind of describe it is like, how Sergeant Slaughter was both a wrestler in real life and also in G.I. Joe. It's kind of like that, where it's like, Halloween Boy is a guy, and also he's in this toy line where he's going to be a part of this universe of these characters in Operation Monster Force.
I kind of love that.
That's the fridge.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's the fridge, or definitely not that Rocky Balboa figure, which almost happened and then fell apart.
Literally about to bring that up. You read my mind.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that didn't happen, because that would have just been sort of weird.
I love that stuff.
Maybe a bridge too far. I don't know. Like, wouldn't Rambo be more appropriate?
Yeah, but that's why it's so funny that it's Rocky to me. That's why I'm like, Rocky on G.I. Joe, sure.
The Cobra boxer guy has to have somebody to fight.
Well, yeah, Big Bo. He was supposed to be the Rocky figure's antagonist.
Yeah, they're going to be a 2-pack, and that guy was going to like come with the Rocky figure. Yeah,
yeah, and they would duke it out.
Yeah,
duking it out on Cobra.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Man, so what? So okay, we've kind of hit the launch pad for Mary Tyler Moorhead. What else do you have cooking that you can talk about? What are we looking at in the near or far future?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff I'm working on right now is Halloween Boy, selling that, self-publishing that, trying to break even on those single issues. Which is fun, man. It's, I think that there's look, I think it's always and it's in that world, but it's also equally fun to me to do things on your own. I like being a weird indie person and like I'm just gonna do this now, and not trying to wait for permission is really cool. And so yeah, I'm working on Halloween, the new thing for Halloween Boy. I'm also writing some Turtles stuff, which I think gets announced very soon, but I don't think it's quite announced yet. So keep your mouth. Turtles. Yeah, and then I've got 2 other graphic novels that are not currently announced, or they're still in the process of doing all those things. But right now the focus is just, oh dear Christ, let's please let's sell like 2 of these. Oh gosh, I can't disappoint Daddy Staros.
So are there you're clearly your own man and want to do your own thing, and I respect the hell out of you for that. And I want to know though, are there any characters of a larger milieu that if you were given free reign to run around with, would you do it, and who would it be?
Well, to a certain extent, I have, because my gut instinct is to answer Star Trek. Man, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm obsessed with Star Trek.
As one should be.
But it's just I have not written Jim Kirk. I would love to write a Kirk thing. But aside from that, the Phantom. I would love to write the Phantom. I would love to write Jimmy Olsen. I'm a huge Superman Pals Jimmy Olsen's fan. I'm human. I'm flawed. I love Batman, bro. I love Batman. Of course, I want to write a little Batman. A little. My parents are dead.
I take it since since you like Jimmy Olsen, you were probably a fan of Steve Lieber and Matt Fraction's Jimmy Olsen.
Of course, it's great. It's great. It's
great. Yeah, as soon as you made that connection, I bet he loves that comic.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah,
and it's not what you would expect from one of the big two either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has more to do with Fraction than it does them.
Sure.
I think he's an immense talent, and yeah, I hope sooner rather than later we get more Casanova. Man, that's my favorite thing of all time. So
is it really? That's awesome. Yeah, that is a bonkers series.
Yeah, I love it. It's so good. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's pretty subtle. You can see the impact of that on all of my work. I think you can look at it and be like, yeah, you do like this.
Well, we're fixing to wrap it up. Chad, do you want to throw one more to Dave?
Sure. I've since I've been following you on TikTok, you've very well embraced that type of social media. Has that been something that's been kind of easy for you to do? I mean, because you're always like answering people's questions and showing your process.
It's fun.
How's that journey been?
Yeah, I would say it's fun, man. I like talking to people. I like making friends with people. I'm very approachable, probably a little too approachable, frankly. I could probably use a little, step back and be a little less like, yeah, I'll give you my number. Let's meet up for coffee. And then you realize, oh, this was a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. But sometimes you got to do things just for the stories, Sometimes you just got to. One time I met a guy who was the ghost singer for a bunch of people on that show Glee, and he had an idea to make a comic, and he wanted to hire me to make a comic about a jazz singer who could sing so loud that he could make lasers come out of like a lightsaber, basically, and he would like sing a lightsaber into existence, and he would fight crime with it. And he wanted to go to conventions dressed as this jazz singing, laser sword wielding vigilante. And I was like,
I'd read it.
Dude, me too. That's the thing. I would read it. I don't want to make it though.
Right.
But I would
need a certain level of passion for jazz to do justice by that concept.
100%. And I went out with the guy because I was entertaining it. Is like, maybe I'll do it. I don't know. You never know. And so we go out to lunch or dinner or whatever. We're talking about it. He's pitching it to me. He's so into it. He's like, I want to wear a black cape and a beret, and I'm going to grow my facial hair and have a goatee, and we'll draw the character like me. Then I'll go to conventions dressed as the character. And I was like, I don't know, dude. But that being said, to answer your question, yeah, I really like it. I don't know that I always love the process of making videos and being online and doing that. I think social media, it just sucks up so much time that I wish I could be dedicating to making things. But I like the process of interacting with people and answering questions and being encouraging of other artists. Especially on TikTok, it's a platform that skews significantly younger, and so there's lots of people who comment like, one day I'll make a comic, and it's like, yeah, man, you can. No one is stopping you. Like, this is great. Like, and people, they have questions that are very logistical of just like, no, but how do I contact a printer? And my guy, I have done that so many times of just like, let me tell you how to format your PDFs. This is how you use InDesign. Like, it's boring. It's boring, but that's the stuff you got to go through to get the work out, right?
Mhm.
And so, on a good day, I love TikTok, I love Instagram, I love all of it. It's so great. On a bad day, I hate TikTok, I hate Instagram, burn it all down. This sucks. I just don't like this feedback loop. It feels bad to post a video and it gets 200 views, but that's the process of these things, right? It's the
Boy, do we know that.
yeah.
And I guess what do you want those who read Mary Tyler Moorehawk to come away with? Is there something you want them to come away with besides having read the awesome book?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm too close to it right now. I feel like I'm so in it. I've just been so desperately trying to push this boulder up a hill for 5 years, and now we're like on the finish line, and it's like, do you want to run another marathon? And you're like, no, never. Marathons are the devil.
I'm cool.
And then when someone asks you, why did you run the marathon? You're like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm bleeding out of my toes right now. I have I got nothing. So like, and especially with a book like MTMH, where it is so dense, I think in some ways I was attempting to make something that was just a record of my experience making it. And I hope that might be something someone enjoys, maybe. I guess in the most egotistical version of it, I want to have a mark on the medium, right? I want to try and push the medium forward and do more weird and experimental avant-garde things. And then more humbly, I would just like us to break even for Chris Staros, because he bet on me and I really owe him and I feel indebted to him, and I would like this book to be success as much for him as for me.
Absolutely. So, elevator pitch. Someone's never heard of Mary Tyler Moorehawk. How do you sell them on it?
I usually say, if it's a quick meeting, it's Johnny Quest meets Infinite Jest. So it's a simple thing. But here's a problem with that. I don't know that actually summarizes it all that well.
That's why they call it an elevator pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you curious. You're like, what does that mean? So if it's a little bit longer, I usually say what I said up top of like, it's a novel and a graphic novel. The graphic novel part is an action adventure retrofuturist story about a family of adventurers trying to stop the end of the world. And the novel part is about a journalist named Dave Baker who's obsessed with a TV show that only lasted 9 episodes named Mary Tyler Moorehawk, who then eventually discovers that the creator of that show is also named Dave Baker. And that opens up weird and existential questions for him. Which I also don't know that explains it really either. If you guys got a pitch, I'm open to it, man. Help me out, bro. I'm game. Whatever you want to do.
You don't want me to pitch things. I'm just awful. But I will say that the book is really something special. I didn't quite make it all the way through the promo pages you sent us. But what I did read was the work of a singular vision. And there's just not enough of that out there. And if you you're listening to this and you take nothing away from this conversation, it's that Dave Baker is one of these creators that will be on your tongue, whose name will be on your tongue. That's what I actually meant.
It's definitely a book that's going to require more than one read.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? And that's literally the goal. The idea that it would require more than one viewing and that you couldn't read it in 15 minutes,
right,
is like what I was trying to do. That's not going to be for everybody. Sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you just want to read Batman and have it be over in 10 minutes and be like, hell yeah, I did a thing. Moving on. And that's great. I do that all the time. I just bought Raphael Grandpa's Gargoyle of Gotham #2. It was delicious. I loved it. I ate it in one sitting. It was delicious.
Well, the book is Mary Tyler Moorehawk. It goes on sale February 13th, and it's created by Dave Baker. Dave, thank you so very much for hanging out with us for this episode. I hope we can have you again sometime.
Dude, love to. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah,
all
let's
right,
hang out. Let's go on a road
trip
together.
We will not wait 5 years for your next book to complete either. I don't have that.
Are you doing it? Are you scheduled for any shows this year so
Yeah,
far, or where can people find you on the road?
yeah. I'm gonna do a bunch. I'm doing Emerald City in a couple weeks.
Awesome.
I'm gonna do C2E2, TCAF, CXC, New York, San Diego, and other ones that I'm now blanking on. But yeah, I'm around. Yeah, I'm definitely around.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for listening. Please do remember, it can be a crappy world out there, but it doesn't have to be. Get out there, read something cool, support your local comic book shop, and above all else, be kind to each other. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.